I could see like the metal kind of like seeping into my skin, and there was these things spraying me, and they were laughing at me. I could see the time that I died on this clock. There's no time or space there at all. And all of a sudden, they were spraying me with this hot, steamy water. They're laughing. You could tell there's these little puny looking things, evil. You could smell the nastiest things you could ever smell, basically. All of a sudden, God was like, come here. I'm laying there. I'm laying there on my back. I was done. God came up right behind me. I could feel his presence. His loving, his caring. And there was this native American horns, all mixed in. And he goes, I'll give you a choice. Basically, I'll give you a choice. You want to come back or go home. But his love radiated against me. I did not want to go home. I wanted to go with him. All of a sudden, he shows me.
My guest today is Elias Alonzo, who had a near-death experience in 2021 as a result of contracting double pneumonia and COVID. He was in an induced coma for over a month, and his oxygen saturation went all the way down to 5%. Guys, normal is 95 to 100% oxygen saturation. So he was very close to death. He has a tracheotomy as a result, and he had a very profound near-death experience that I am excited for him to share today. So, Elias, Eli, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here because you have a fascinating story. And it's interesting that I think you're the third person I'm interviewing who had an induced coma during COVID and had a near-death experience. And I've also had other people on the show who have had comas as a result of injuries, illnesses, accidents, who wind up having a near-death experience. So I think it's an interesting point of view for the people that are watching, because I'm sure for a lot of people that are watching, they've had loved ones. And we often wonder, like during the coma, can they hear us? Are they there? And it sounds like, you might have been in an astral plane, completely different on the other side. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what your life was like before you had this near-death experience?
I was raised Pentecostal. My dad was a pastor. And like saying, when I was little, I used to go to church with my dad. We used to go like clean the churches, of course, with him. And we used to praise the Lord. I used to sing actually on the pulpit, like with my brothers. So, I mean, we were pretty, like a tight knit family, actually. My mom was a stay at home mom. We didn't believe in we weren't like believing that, like paranormal stuff or anything. My dad, like he had taught us at a young age where basically heaven and hell, basically. There was no in between. There was just basically, like if you die, you got to be straight by God. You know, uh,
Okay.
I was really into, like church and stuff like that. I accepted God in my heart, when I was a kid and stuff like that. I got older. I just lived life. I worked. I went to church. Sometimes I went to church. So I just went on to like get a job. Have a family. Settle down. Yeah,
Just living life.
yeah, living life to the fullest. Like they always say.
Until COVID hit. So why don't you share your near-death experience in any way that you would like?
Okay, well, I'll get to this first if you don't mind me. I have a channel. I came with a channel, but it's a pain. Like I talk about pain because I have like a really bad pain, like neuropathy pain through a car accident I had. So then, like 2 months further on, I hung around with like paranormal groups like online, and I interviewed their channels as well. So I got really deep into that. Uh, so further on, like let's say maybe 2 years down the road, I was interviewing a person, and when I was talking to him, I said, "I wonder how it feels to die." So then a week later, me and my fiance, we were gonna come up with a plan to go out because we thought, okay, let's go relax in San Antonio. We had got the tickets ready, like at the hotel and everything, and we were gonna go to the river walk and enjoy ourselves. So we're getting that ready. So I got home that afternoon. My mom has sat me down. She says, well, at the time I was living with my mom and my sister and her kids. I have my own place now, but so I was. My mama told me, she was like, "Well, you might tell your fiance you might not see her for a couple of weeks because, you might need to stay in your room, and my daughter had another room, and so, for her to stay in her room because they're sick. They came down with COVID. I don't know if you're supposed to, say this on there or not, but if that's okay or not.
Oh,
Uh,
it's totally fine. Absolutely. Yes.
okay, so a week later, I was like, okay, like I thought nothing was happening. I thought, okay, like I didn't get it. They got better. I got worse. I started, coughing, having fevers. I took some medicine. At first, my breathing got a little bit kind of like worse. My fiance was just like, hey, she was on the phone. She goes, you need to go see a doctor. So I was just like, I'm a hard headed guy, but I just ignore people. I'm like, hey, I'm the kind of person where I could just get through anything and survive, survive anything. Basically, that's how I've always been in life. So give it maybe a couple of days later, I start coughing really bad. My pain really, really got worse in my leg because that's where I got in a car accident in 2012 where I became disabled. So I was laying in bed. My sister comes knocking at the door. She goes, "Hey, I'm making my signature dish. A Mexican signature dish for breakfast." So I was like, "Okay." I was laying there and I was just like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "I don't feel good." And she's like, "Yeah, your lips are turning blue. I'm gonna call the ambulance." And I didn't know. Like I couldn't breathe as well. I thought it was just maybe I was just out of breath. So my sister put out a chair. She opened the door. She called the ambulance. Called 911. So I was standing there and I was maneuvering around the hallway because my mom has a wardrobe in the middle. And luckily she had that because I was about to faint. I was holding on to that wardrobe. So I sat down on a wooden chair they had. 911 was talking to me. They're like, how's it going? I told my name. I could not breathe. I was like, man, I just breathe, I breathe, cough. They're like, okay, the ambulance is coming. That's fine. They took me to the stretcher onto the ambulance. All I noticed, I was just like, I couldn't breathe. They put in with those little lines for my nose. I don't know what they're called. So they put that on. I could not breathe for the life of me. I was just like, I was just couldn't breathe at all. So and then they started. All I remember, they put in a little bag where they just start squishing, like like have me breathe manually. All I know is I dropped my phone. I was gonna text my fiance. I mean, I couldn't breathe. I was gonna tell her I was going to the hospital, but she didn't know what was happening with me. So my phone dropped. When my phone dropped, I was heading through a tunnel, and in this tunnel, I heard people, "Forgive me. I don't know what I did. Please, in your name, I did this." And I hear young kids too, and I know what they did. Some did murders, some just did awful things. Like I could tell about their what they did, how old they were. I seen their whole life, but real quick, like in a second, why they were there, what happened, and so all of a sudden it was like quick, like a whirlwind. I landed on the ground. My hands were over my head, and I was in a hospital room. And mind you, when you pass, you have no motion of moving your head back and forth. You see everything from your side of your head, from your front, from your back, basically. Um, it's a panoramic vision, basically, where you see everything, but you don't got to move your head or anything. So while I was doing that, I was holding my head just down, and I hear, "You ain't going nowhere. You're pathetic. She don't love you. No one loves you." You hear with the deep voice, but with that voice, it was like a lot of voices in one voice, basically. If you, I don't know if I said it right, but yeah. So it kind of scares me because I'm just like, wow, like it brings me back to that time. where it was just like evil voices. They were like, "You see, you're pathetic," like basically, but they just called me all these awful names, basically. So then I kind of, through my back of my head, I see them working on me. They're trying to help me breathe. So it was this black male. I never seen him in my life, but I feel like I've known him in another life, but I didn't. So then all of a sudden, like I'm laying there, and right next to me, I see. I'm like outside my body seeing this. Um, there was this postcard holder, and this postcard holder, there was this gold phone, and it kept on ringing and ringing because my fiance tried to get a hold of me because she was worried about me. So in this postcard holder, there was this doctor, black hair woman. She goes, "You don't need that right now. You're fine." She calmed me down basically. She goes, "Everything's gonna be okay." So then I felt this overwhelming, like calmness, and God, He was telling me, He goes, now, He goes, in a real calming voice. Well, it's not a voice, it was telepathy basically. He told me to look right, but not turn my head, but look right. And he showed me souls that were in the hospital, deceased. And he was all like, "Well, you see this guy, just cleaner. He died here in this hospital. He did bad. He did bad with younger kids, but he died there." And he showed me two more doctors that were walking with clipboards. He was saying when they died here as well, they they did messed up things with patients that weren't supposed to happen, and they got caught up and they died here in their sin. So and all of a sudden there was this whooshing sound. They said, "Come here." Boom. So then I was I was transported to a dance hall. It was long. There was a stage. There was chairs on top. I was basically laying there, and everything was broken down. Like the bed was to the ground, like wires around my face, plastic wires, and I could breathe. I honestly, I just outside my body, I could breathe. I felt awesome. Like I seen I seen the one of the nurses that were sitting outside the room, writing down some stuff. Beside her, it felt like my sister was, you know, saying some nasty words to her about me. I was laying there, and I could see it, but it felt like it was a mile away, a mile away. I could see all the doctors walking outside the room, doing their hospital stuff, whatever they're doing. This nurse walks in, curly hair, glasses. Still see her to this day. Just telling the story. Wife, female. She comes up and she goes, "Oh my god!" She was like, "You made it!" I'm like, "Can't you feel the love?" Like that, basically loud. She goes, "We've been waiting for you. Can't you? Can you tell? Oh my god! I mean, you're so famous here." They're like, um, "Welcome." Basically, he's like basically telling me that I made it to the other side. Basically, but with that love, it was basically deception. Basically, I felt that, and she told me, "Let me tell you a story about. Let me tell you a story about this dance hall. In this dance hall, two people had died here. I felt death too. I felt it. It's weird. It took me through a wall outside where they died in their car. I guess, I don't know, they got drugged up or something. They died there, and the nurse that died there used to work at that hospital with her boyfriend. They died in that car. I remember just laying there, and I was in shock. I really was. She was just, and I seen my daughter running around, peeking into the doors and stuff like that. And then God was like, "Come here." I was sitting there on a chair, not a chair, but like one of those comfortable chairs, like a lazy chair, lazy boy chair. He had sat me there. He goes, "Everything's gonna be okay." Basically, I'm gonna tell you some stuff that really, really like comfortable, like a motherly feeling, a motherly love. Tell me it's gonna be okay. Don't move. don't look over there. And on the wall there was, it was a golden cross, and there was a bench right next to it. On that, he was just like, "Are you ready?" And I'm just like, "Ready for what?" I thought, "Ready for what?" It's all telepathy. He was telling me. On my right, there was my showed my sister getting married, and there was this big old festival going on with her. And God had put me, those laboratory films where they put like kind of like where they can tell what kind of diseases they are and everything. God had put me in one of those films, with those plastic films. He put me on there and he goes, "Come here." He took me. I'm on this boat. It's very dark, very staticky, and this guy's holding on a lantern. He's like that. He's all like, "I don't know how I died," and it was really creepy. Like, creeps me out to this day because I'm just like, you can feel the stillness of the black water in this boat that's really old. It felt like it was from the 1800s, around 18 to remember, it's 1806. And he was telling me, "I don't know how I died. I don't know how I came here." All of a sudden, God was all like, "Come here." I'm being actually pushed into this cave, like, really lightly. I have no way of stopping it. Honestly, like, when you pass, I'm gonna say this real quick. When you pass, you forget about where you come from. That's your new reality. You're stuck there. So I'm just a viewer, basically, out of my own body. When I go in this cave, I sit down Indian style. I don't feel myself, but I know I am. I know I'm being seated. Right next to me, there's this Native American Indian, fully entire, like, with his feathers. I mean, he was really decked up. He was actually there with me. I was like, wow, like, you could smell him. He smelled like musk. He smelled weird. All of a sudden, like, the walls crumbled. The wall of the cave crumbled. You could feel all the rocks, all everything crumble. And there was this beautiful water. It was blue. Oh my God, the most bluest water you could see. It spoke to you in many words. Even the colors did. The trees spoke to you, like, it was just like a wonderful feeling. He was telling me how that's what love was, basically. And he was telling me how the waters dance, how the trees can listen to you and talk to you. But then all of a sudden, he laid down on this rock. He lay back. He was going. He was gone. He was dead. Passed away. There was this woman that came in, just glided to me. Same woman, black hair, long black hair. She goes, "You need to eat something." And I said, "I can't eat nothing. I can't." And she looked at me weird, just looked at me with a weird look. We're just like, "Huh, what?" So all of a sudden, God was like, "Come here." I was on this chair. On this chair. I call this. I call this. I call this. Uh, I call this one Eminem. M&Ms, because when I was sitting there, I'm sorry, I'm kind of freaked out because every time I tell a story, like, it's gonna, okay. So on this counter, there was this big old large glass of M&Ms, and in this apartment, you can see the stove there, you can see the table in the back of your head, you can see everything, the stairs, the TV in front of you, the front door. You can see everything as an apartment, as you can see an apartment. It's like, so all of a sudden, the garage door opens. There's this police officer comes in, and on this TV, some thing was going on, a drama was going on TV. And she goes, "My daughter's dead," just crying at me. She goes, "If it wasn't for you dying, she would be here with me. How dare you? What did you do?" And I'm just like, "What's going on?" Like, I mean, like, blaming me for something that, like, I don't know what happened, basically. And all of a sudden, God showed me a playground. And then all of a sudden, like, from there, I'm on my bed. On my bed, I was laying there. I could see myself floating on my over my body on the ventilator. It came out. There was this big old window in front of me. There was these two kids sitting there playing video games. It sounded like a ventilator machine. At that time, I didn't know what it was because I didn't know what's going on. All I know, I had this thing sticking out of my throat. That's what I was thinking. There was this guy too busy flirting with this nurse, comes in, looks at me straight up. He goes, "Hey, do you need any help?" And I'm just like, I looked at him. I was like, "Hey, my ventilator's coming out of my throat. Hello?" Like, and I could see my hole. I could see my hole straight up in my body. I was breathing normally. So all of a sudden, like, there was these boxes of me and my daughter, and there was this filing cabinet, a metal one from way back then, like 70s. I could tell it smells from the 70s. I could smell it. All of a sudden, like, I hear my mom outside. Oh, when is he gonna wake up? When is he gonna wake up? Some of these visions that God showed me, I was just like, why is he showing me this? Like, it didn't make any sense. Some of these didn't just, I don't understand them. And then God was, he was like, come here. Boom. I'm kind of like gliding through this parking lot. He put me on in the shipping container, and I was laying there. I was laying there trying to get up, but I couldn't get up because I didn't know this then. But when I was when you're on the ventilator, they tie you up just in case you wake up and you're not trying to pull out your cords or whatever in your throat and everything. So I didn't know that. This big old lady, she came in, she goes, "You ain't going anywhere." Basically, with mean, just mean. And back then I was a security guard in the past. And I remember I was looking for my gun, and I was like, "Oh, this lady's scary. I got to get out of here." Like, I was just frightened of this lady. So again, God was like, "Come here, shh, come here. I'm gonna show you something." I'm in the back of this van. There's a nail stuck in my foot, and I was just yelling and crying. I mean, around this van, everything was boarded up. Out of this van, people were celebrating my death. Basically, they were just with champagne, like everything. Like, you could hear clanking of glasses and everything. They're like, "Oh, huh? He's dead. This guy's pathetic. He ain't going anywhere." Basically, voices all around me. Basically, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like, that's creepy right there. I honestly, every time I see a van now these days, a white van, I'm just like, I kind of like brings me back to that moment. But so then God was like, "Come here." Boom. I think, I think God shows me these visions because he died for my sins. Basically, the foot, we got nailed in his foot, on the cross, because he was telling me, "Hey, you need to wake up for what you were doing in your life," basically. And I kind of got that when I came back to life. So that goes from then to another vision. I'm around all these family members that weren't mine, and they're like, "Oh, welcome. Would you like to go ice fishing with me?" And there was this big old hole in the ground. It was really cold. I could feel the ice. And they were telling me, "Isn't life so grand? Like, you're so welcome here anytime." I was like, "What?" Like, I just don't get it. I was like, "Who are these people?" They were just trying to keep me calm. And all of a sudden, like, they were my fiance's family. In this vision, the guy I was talking to was her grandfather that passed away. He was showing me his tugboat that he always wanted in life. He was actually a Marine back in the day. And my fiance kind of showed me a picture, and it was him. That's kind of weird. He showed me the tugboat that he always wanted, and I seen that in the vision as well. Long story short, So all of a sudden, like, God was like, "Come here." They bowed their hands. They bowed their heads when God came. They were just like, bow their heads, like, kind of like basically, don't tell him anymore about that. Um. So he 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 teleported me back to a room. I'm laying there. I'm in the ceiling, still seeing myself. I'm kind of in shock of what I'm seeing. Basically, I have my eyes closed, but still, I kind of see myself. Just there. Basically, I was seeing the window. I was seeing like the tiles on the ceiling and stuff like that. And this female nurse comes in, this black female nurse. She goes, "Okay, we're going to we're going to inject you with some fluid. And in the background, I feel like my mom had something to do with that. And so all of a sudden, I felt the fluids coming through me. Calculation. It feels like it was calculations, basically. I can't tell. I don't even know. I'm not gonna try to make that sound, but yeah, it was a calculations feeling. All of a sudden, they put me on this shelf. I felt like I was this doll. It's crazy. I feel like I was this doll, and I was a doll, and all my family was celebrating. And my mom was like, "It's okay. You'll be okay. It's fine." It paused for a minute, and God was telling me, "Do you see?" Basically, in the feeling of, "Do you see what I mean?" So what he meant by that is, my mom basically, whenever she needs her kids, she uses them and she puts them back on the shelf whenever she don't use them, basically. And that I need to stand up for myself more in life. It was scary. I could feel him next to me. I mean, he wouldn't say any words, but he was just showing me and feel just a feeling of. It was like it was this weird feeling, like I could still hear the ventilator, like, and I didn't know what it was until I actually researched it. All of a sudden, God was like, "Come here." He sent me to this small town. In this small town, it was, you could see the town. You could see it was like it was all snowed in. I went in there and I see this man. He was just pointing around like this. My daughter was just all over the place. In life, she is in life, really. You know, she's just all over the place in life, real life. So she was just going all everywhere. This older man, he was basically my friend, one of my friends. I didn't know he died until a few years later. He died in March, a month before I went on a ventilator when I got sick in COVID. I didn't know that, but I seen him there. All of a sudden, my mom was like, "Oh my God, you made it! You're here with me." And my aunt, that actually was on a ventilator as well. She's there. She was there as well. She was sitting there cooking something. It's long. I mean, my experience. There's so much going on. Like, I don't know if you have time. Sorry. I mean, I know.
Well, we do have a little bit of a limit on the time today, but can I go ahead and ask you, so I'm guessing that around this time is when you came back into your body and woke up
Yes.
from the coma. So you want to
Yes.
just tell about that real quick, and then I'll ask you the questions about the near-death
Okay.
experience?
One more thing I want to tell you that's really
Yeah.
important there. I remember there's two things, if you don't mind.
No,
Okay.
sure, go ahead, absolutely.
Just the main ones. So I was hanging on this pipe. Okay. And I could see like the metal kind of like seeping into my skin. And there was these things spraying me and they were laughing at me. I could see the time that I died on this clock. There's no time or space there at all. And all of a sudden, they were spraying me with this hot, steamy water. They're laughing. You could tell there's these little puny looking things, evil. You could smell the nastiest things you could ever smell, basically. All of a sudden, God was like, "Come here." I'm laying there. I'm laying there on my back. I was done. Uh, God came up right behind me. I could feel his presence, his loving, his caring. And there was this native beat to us, like a theme song, like a song, but it wasn't a song, it was just a beat to it. And it was like Native American horns, all mixed in. And he goes, "I'll give you a choice. Basically, I'll give you a choice. You want to come back or go home." But his love radiated against me. I did not want to go home. I wanted to go with him. All of a sudden, he shows me a cloud. And on this cloud is my mom. She called her by her birth name that no one's ever called her in years. She goes, "Stop walking away from him. Listen to me." Basically, listen, calling her name. It's kind of weird. I could tell what he meant by that. And then this other cloud, it was me that needs help. She kept on walking away. So he looked down, basically. I seen his sandal from back then. It was not one of these sandals where, people wearing now these days, these cool sandals. It was this old sandals from back then. I can't really tell. It was like leather. It was like, it was really ancient, basically. I could see his toe. I could see everything. And he looked down at me. He goes, "Get up, get up with authority. Get up, get up." And he goes, "Family, family, family." Basically, your family comes first. Basically, all of a sudden, I wake up. They're pulling. They're like, "Get him quick! Hurry! Get him!" They're pulling 5%. Doctors were amazed. They were like, "How did he survive that? He was a 5%." They pulled out my when they're pulling out my all my stuff, like all the wires and everything on my throat and everything, like tubes. I could feel cockroaches coming out, just like in my just the way I felt. It was just like cockroaches. Um, I could see my mom. I did not want to see my mother because the way God was presenting her as well in my vision. There's a lot more to it, but I'm actually writing a book. Someone's helping me write a book. An author's writing a book about my experience. It's not done yet, but it's really in detail. But go ahead. I'm done with that.
Well, there's so much to unpack here. I guess the thing that's really different about your experience compared to the, I don't know, 150 or so people I've talked to is that this seems very segmented and disconnected. It sounds a little bit more like it is in a dream state where you go from scene to scene and this
Yes.
happens and that happens. And it's almost like a compilation of multiple different things. And I don't know if that's just because of the coma. And I have had people talk about things around the coma.
Mhm.
But what it reminded me of as you were talking, other than the tunnel experience, everything else to me felt more like because you were seeing these disincarnated souls
Mhm.
who didn't know necessarily if they were alive or dead or where they were or
Mhm.
what was going on. And then all of the voices, those scary voices, it seems almost like you were on an astral plane as opposed to being on the other side, like when you were with that water and everything was
Oh yeah.
beautiful.
Oh
Because
yeah.
in heaven, when most people describe it, it's a feeling of like complete joy and love, and there
Mhm.
isn't anything that would be considered dark. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I know you've had a few years to process this, and I'm sure
Okay.
that all come
Um,
into your
I
thoughts.
can. They're my well with the water. It's kind of weird how everything came back with water because in my final moments when I was talking to God, asking for His forgiveness, I always wanted that glass of water. And then that with the water, it means life. It means fulfillment. It means, the breath of fresh air that God gives us today to live. And one of my visions I didn't mention is when I was laying back, I was ready to go to this next island with him. He swooped me up with his hand. We just like I felt that, you know, and basically giving me another chance in life. Basically, he was telling me, "You're not ready to drink that water yet. Your next life is there. I'm gonna give you that water, but you need to think about how I'm sending you back for is your family, basically. That's your new because when he go basically when I say it like this, like when you come to me again in front of me, your kids are going to inherit your being as a dad, as a human being. They're not going to remember you as the person you were before. I mean, I wasn't a bad person, but I was really in the dark side of knowing what death really felt like, and I don't want them knowing that. Like to me, it feels like I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of where my family's gonna be at when I leave this earth. I don't know. That's kind of like, yeah.
So when you talked about the conversations that you had with God, you were talking about God pointing out the different people in the hospital setting, and he was acknowledging all of the things that they had done, which sounded a lot like judgment, which isn't something that I've had really anybody else that I've talked to in these near death experiences talk about, like a God doing a judgment, and it almost
Mm,
sounds like you've mentioned salvation again.
that
So,
was yes.
did
In
you
that,
come out of this like more religious than you were before, where you're now in the tenets of the Bible with the salvation and all of those tenets? And you mentioned the word sin. So those
yeah,
aren't usually things that come up with the near death experiences.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, with that is I always ask that question. When I was telling you about when I did interview people and stuff like that as well. I wanted to know. I don't want to know. Honestly, who does? No one wants to know how they feel like they died. Like I think he was just showing me that, you don't want to know. I felt the fear of those people. I felt it, and
so was God not judging them? He was just
showing
pointing
me that.
out, or did it
Yeah.
feel like it was a judgment of what they did?
It was a judgment of what they did and how it was teaching me how not to how for me not to search for death, basically,
Do
because
you
death.
feel like you were searching for death up
Yes,
until that
I
point?
was. I really want to know what it felt like to be on the other side. It's nothing no one should ever experience in their lifetime. I always say you gotta be right by God, and live your life.
What do you mean when you say you have to be right by God?
Well, to be right by God is to live the way that He would want you to live, like He lived, a righteous way,
Are you talking
loving.
about God or are you talking about Jesus?
Well, Jesus, yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
that sounds like a
Yeah,
differentiation.
Jesus. Sorry about that. Sorry,
No, that's okay.
but it was
I'm just trying
Jesus.
to clarify and make sure
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're, explaining exactly what you want to
yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah. I don't know why I keep saying that. It's just because maybe it was the authoritative way of the way he was showing me.
So
And
do you think that you were actually having encounters with God, or were you, because you mentioned the cross, you mentioned
yes,
the nail thing, or do you think you were having experiences with Jesus?
both. Because I know God was the creator and stuff like that, and I know that He was telling me that, hey, my son died on my cross in the cross for you, and you need to straighten up because there's and we need to follow them so we can we know the right way to go, basically. Honestly, some of those experiences I'm still trying to figure out, basically. There was this other one where I seen death. They wheeled out a little like my actual body bag, and there was death where he was just like, do you want to know more? Basically, he was pointing down to my body, but God didn't allow that, basically. I don't know why I phrased that. It's just a feeling of the mixture of both, showing me what's right and wrong, and why I shouldn't seek it. Just
Okay.
live life instead of seek death, basically.
So a lot of times when people come back from the other side, they wind up having abilities that they didn't have before. Did that change for you?
Yes, I did. I did. I can actually sense things. Like, I mean, I can sense when, like, for example, my brother was going through a lot. He suffered through a lot, and uh, he's he's basically he was in hospital. He was suffering through alcoholism, whatever. We drink too much, So he was suffering through that. My mom calls me up, and I just had this raw feeling of something was wrong, like someone was gonna tell me something. He was on a respirator for a while, for like maybe like 2 weeks, and he my mom called me. She goes, "Hey, your brother's in real shape." He showed me a picture of him being on a respirator, and I was just like, "Wow!" I knew that. I just had a feeling something was happening. And also, like, there's other things that like if I'm in my room and my fiance goes to work in the morning, sometimes at night, and I know someone's gonna approach my door and knock at it, a bedroom door, and I know who it is. Like, it's just a sense of things. I know, just I don't know how you explain it. I'm not gonna sit there and say I'm this and that and this, but it's just a feeling of the knowing of things. Like, I'll tell my fiance in bed, I was like, I'm just letting you know about my feelings. I really don't want to tell you this, but something's gonna happen. But I'm sorry, this is gonna happen to you. And all of a
Mm.
sudden, something
So it's almost
happens.
like
Yeah,
precognition that you
pre-cop. Yeah,
can feel
I
something
have that.
coming.
I do. I have that. I sense people. I sense people's feelings and knowings. Like, and it's weird. I don't want that. It kind of like freaks me out a little bit because I'm like, There's certain days where I'm just like, okay, what's gonna happen? Something's gonna happen. I'm gonna get a phone call, or one of my kids are gonna act up because they're being punks, and I know, and it happens. I'm like, okay, wait, before you say anything, what's wrong? Basically.
Well, it sounds like it has changed you in a lot of different ways,
Oh yeah.
and you're writing your book. So, if people have connected with you, where can they find you?
I haven't been on there for a while. Has my pictures of me being on the ventilator and stuff like that, and shows like the interviews I have with paranormal investigators as well. Um, it's I think it's EOI little dash in the middle family 1983, or I'm on Twitter as well for it's I think it's give me a second. Correct. My memory, I don't even know. Let me see. It's at E Family 1983. That's my Twitter. But it's been really a game changer. I think that God was just telling me that, just showing me. I don't know why He was showing me these visions, but basically it's just like saying that life is good and you shouldn't be looking for those things that ain't really you're not really supposed to be doing. Like I can't interview like that again at all
What do you
because
mean? What do you mean?
I can't interview paranormal investigators anymore, knowing that I know what I know
Oh,
now. I can't do that because the friends that I used to know, they don't talk to me anymore because of that. Because they're like, they think they know more than I know now. It's just like when they talk to me on the phone, it's just like I know that it's just a knowing. It feels like it's just a knowing of they're wrong, basically. And when some people were like when I don't really believe that if they go to a grave, they're not really there. Why would they be there at a grave? I don't think they're there. They basically have like it's a guardian basically. Like the dead ain't supposed to talk to the living basically. I'm just like it kind of freaks me out knowing that like they're not supposed to talk to them. Basically when they talk to them, like everybody goes out there with spirit boxes and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. It's just like why would they tell you these things? They're not there anymore. They're tricking you basically, or what they're saying to you. Like they come up with little words and this and that and this, and it's just like
is
why
that
would
kind
they?
of what
It's
you
about
felt
to.
like because that's what they were doing to you during when you were in that
Yeah,
coma?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. They when people were trying to communicate with me on the other side, there was a blockage. I could feel like I could feel them in my head with those things they were using. I could feel like the transition things going to your head. It was this weird feeling. Like I kind of ignore that feeling when they were doing that. I kind of like
Do you think you were blocking it, like, with
I was
your
blocking it. I was
free
blocking it.
will?
Yeah. I didn't
Okay.
I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with it. And they weren't allowed to. I wasn't allowed to communicate with them. I even told them that. I wasn't allowed to communicate with them because it was against God basically, or Jesus. Sorry.
Mm.
It was basically, like when you pass, like you die in your spiritual form basically. In your spiritual form, if you're a bad person, you die as a bad person. And you're a good person. Well, I was in between basically when he was showing me this. So
Well, you said when somebody dies as a bad person, what does that mean? Do you mean that they don't go to the other side to heaven?
I honestly think that like with that, what I believe is God has a waiting bay for you.
A what? A what?
I call it a waiting bay,
A waiting bay,
sort of like it was like so
like
I'll
a
say
garage.
no, 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 no. It was sort of like a place where he puts you on hold. The souls where
Okay.
he puts you on hold, and in this place, um, he keeps you there. He keeps you there. So when he comes back for his people, he'll judge you.
Oh,
Basically,
you're talking about the Jesus with the Bible where it says
yes,
that you die and you just are waiting,
yes,
and then when Jesus comes back, everybody gets
yes,
resurrected and goes.
yes,
So
ma'am,
that's
yes, ma'am,
very the biblical version.
yes,
Okay.
ma'am, yes, ma'am. Well, I didn't experience hell.
Yeah,
It's
right.
I felt being judged. It was being judged of what I did.
Hmm.
I mean, there was beautiful things in there, but there were kind of like not beautiful things in there. So yeah.
Well, Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation, and I know it takes a lot to do
It
these
does.
interviews and to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. And it sounds like you had so much more that you experienced from this. So, well,
Thank
that's
God for
amazing.
everything.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And when you've got your book ready, let us know so I can put a link in the show notes so people can find it. And
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.